Hey, good morning, y'all. My name's Bill, and this is my co-host,
I'm
Luisa,
Luisa.
and this is the Awakening. Oh, I'm gonna cry. Awakening and Conscious Living podcast. And we're gonna do something a little different today. We are starting. This will be the first of 10 episodes, and this particular podcast focus we're calling the invisible patterns controlling your life. Um, all spiritual wisdom traditions point to basically losing the ego and the false patterns and the false belief systems that we have in our life that we've accumulated. Um, One of my favorite scriptures, I've told y'all, do not conform yourself to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind. And renewing your mind is basically looking at all the patterns that we have assimilated since birth. And as we look at those patterns, we have to decide whether they're true or false. And this path leads to all of us that do this path, that walk this path, leads to authenticity. It leads to stepping into your power. It leads to being joyful and peaceful. And it leads to becoming a sovereign being. And I know that that's my wish for everybody. Um, and and so we're just going to start in general today about what patterns are and get you comfortable with that. And Louisa is going to tell us about a free tool that she has created for us, which was very sweet. I just saw it last night and I'm like, oh, damn, this is good. Uh, but Louisa's going to tell us about a free tool that we'll be able to send you. Louisa?
Yes. I've created this free tool for us to observe our patterns, and it's intended to be a guide for conscious awakening. We are going to get into today the introduction about what patterns are and how they run our lives in the background without us necessarily being aware of them. So, this tool is a great guide. Not only is it going to help you identify your tools, but then there's a little section in there for you. It's for 7 days, and it's a little it tells you exactly what you need to be paying attention to and how to identify whether or not something is a pattern in your life. Because once you identify it as a pattern, then that's when the rest of the work starts. This is going to give you an observational journal for 7 days to be able to do that. It walks you through all of the questions, all of the things you need to be paying attention to. And then there's a final day reflection for the 7 days that's going to help you identify how these patterns have been running in your life and affecting it in the background without you being aware. We are going to, if you can send us an email, to Bill's email, which we will include in the show notes and in the description for you. Bill will send this right over to you. And if you have any questions or you need to, us to walk you through it, I am here for all of it. Reach out. We will be so excited to send it to you and let us know if it's helpful or in any other way that it could have been helpful.
First off, Louisa, let's talk about what a pattern is and how we pick up a pattern. Do you want to take that question? Because I
Yeah.
think let's define what that means.
So a pattern, and I'll, of course, like we always do, define it in the way that I interpret it. First of all, I think I want to make sure to point out that patterns are not flaws. I think a lot of times we can get hung up in the idea that a pattern is there's something wrong with me. And it's not necessarily that there's something wrong with me. It's that this is a behavior, actions that I take continuously, whether consciously or unconsciously, affect the way that I, for example, make decisions or the way that I lead my life in any specific way. Um, a pattern, when I'm thinking about the way that I look at it, is behavior that consciously or unconsciously I repeat, whether in a specific situation, based on either wounds, whether they are emotional wounds from this lifetime, other lifetimes, cultural, familial, and a lot too, like from the workplace, for example. Those are the best words I've got.
Okay, so I want to say something here real quick. So there are good patterns and bad patterns. Okay. So a good pattern is you get up and you brush your teeth and you make your coffee. Okay.
Mhm.
Now, if the first time you learn to brush your teeth or make your coffee or drive a car, there's no pattern there. Okay. And so we have our, as we do things, we create patterns in our mind, and that makes us go boom, boom, click, click, move right through the world. But
Mhm.
there are patterns that we've picked up from the world and I'm going to talk about one or two of those. We're specific about what a pattern looks like. That we operate through and with this pattern, but it really is not helping us.
Yeah.
So I would say, like, here's some real basic patterns. One of them that I think, and this could be a little controversial, but I think the whole Christian, and I'm a Christian at some level because I love Christ, but the whole thing about judgment inside the Christian religion, and you're going to die and go to heaven and hell and sin and all this stuff, this judgment where this person on a throne, this God is going to, you know, slice and dice us or usher us into this beautiful golden castle. I think that that is a bad pattern that we've picked up because all through the Bible, Jesus talks about not judging. Do not judge yourself. Do not judge others. Take the log out of your own eye before you take the splinter out of your friend's eye. And judgment is a pattern. And we judge ourselves constantly, and judging ourselves constantly causes us to judge others. And we barely can figure out how to get through this life on our own, more or less know what's right for other people, right? And everybody's on their own path. So, uh, judgment is a pattern. Another pattern, and there are a lot of sub patterns underneath this pattern, a
Yes.
lot of sub patterns underneath judgment, but there's a lot of sub patterns underneath fear.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, if I walk to the corner here and I see a car coming, I mean, I don't step out in front of the car, right? I
Right.
mean, but originally it, that pattern got established out of fear, and that's a good pattern. But a lot of times I run fear patterns in my mind, like, well, what if I don't get this grade, or what if I run out of gas, or I don't have money, or I don't get this job, or I don't get this promotion, and then we just let it spin. And that fear that you have standing on the street corner that keeps you safe from a car, after that um, example, that episode, that action passes, that fear passes. But we build these huge fear patterns. And the same thing that happens on the corner in our body, we freeze, we quit thinking, our heart starts racing. We create that same bodily experience when we run these big fears in our mind. And so that's kind of my explanation about what a pattern is and how it works. And we'll get into in other episodes very specific patterns that we pick up as children in families, in schools. Sit still, be quiet, you know? So anyway,
Yeah, and I'd add to that a big one with regards to schools, because I feel very passionate about it, is this idea that somebody knows better than us. That's a pattern that then becomes, affects your life. Um, so yeah, I just kind of put a bow on everything that you just said, Bill. And, in essence, patterns, they're outdated survival strategies that we, at some point in our life, they did serve us. They did help keep us safe. They did help us, feel accepted, prepared, protected, or in control. But what happens with those patterns is that in essence, they become the very same thing that keeps you stuck because they become patterns. Because that bodily sensation or whatever your body is doing from a biological perspective then becomes the norm, what you just expect and what you accept to be true. And you just run with that every time a situation arises that makes you feel that fear or whatever that is that initially caused you to react that way.
uh, I like that term you just said, outdated survival strategies, because so many of our patterns got picked up and have allowed us to stay safe in society.
Yeah.
But we're no longer going to be those people staying safe. We're going to become sovereign beings.
Yeah.
So you just started talk about, and I talked a little bit about it, about feeling these reactions, these patterns in our body. Why don't you tell us how to spot a normal pattern as opposed to a pattern that's not serving you?
So I think first of all, those bodily sensations that you feel, um, you do have to pay attention, and it does take a level of self-awareness to be able to know this is happening in my body. So you have to tune in. But to identify a pattern, I'll kind of try to think of some of my own. Um, Actually, I have the perfect example. So I am, you know, I'll just I'll edit this if I feel like it later, Bill, but I am purchasing a vehicle for my son. It's a big purchase for me. It's the first time that I've made a vehicle purchase 100% on my own without any input from like anyone except just fully myself. Based on how big of a purchase this is for me, the pattern of being controlled by money that was created for me in my childhood, that has come up to the surface. How did I know that came up to the surface? Because even though I am very prepared and I have a sheet of exactly I know how much money I can spend on the vehicle. I know exactly how much it's going to cost me every month. I know I'm prepared. I know how much the insurance is going to go up. I know all of the costs despite from a logical perspective having all of those details and being confident in my decision. When it was time to pull the trigger, I started to feel my heart palpitating, my mind, I started to have a million doubts. Things like, "Oh my god, I'm a single mother. This is a big purchase. Does he need a car this nice? Does he need this? Is this something that's rational? Is it something that should I be buying something that's not as nice?" All of those things that are happening right now in my body, like my heart palpitating, all of those thoughts ruminating over and over again that did not allow me to just sign that piece of paper to move on and go ahead and make the purchase just in that very moment, right? I'm talking like seconds here. Um, Noticing those things, I realized that pattern of this fear around money, of this money controlling me, that fear that how much I spent on that car would then be a factor that would control the choices that I would be able to make from a financial perspective. That is how I identify. Is this a normal pattern, a pattern that's just like not negatively impacting me, or is it a pattern that is negatively impacting me? In this case, I realize there's more work to do around that pattern of fear around making big purchases and spending money in large amounts. I realized that in that moment because I knew how my heart felt and I wasn't able to just, my mind wasn't able to just clearly move forward and make the decision without all of the ruminating negative thoughts.
And tell me where again you think you picked this pattern up?
My childhood. So I was controlled by my family with money. If I didn't do something, I wouldn't get money. So if an example would be as a child, this sounds crazy, but so as a child, I grew up with my dad, who was a bachelor in his, I think, early 20s when I first came to live with him. Um, in his mid-20s, actually. So but it was very like, "If you don't clean the house today, then you said you wanted to go out for ice cream with your cousins, then I'm not gonna give you the $20 to go out with your cousins." And that sounds if that only happened once or twice or happened, a few times, that's not a big deal. I've done that to my kids, like, "Clean your room if you wanna go out," like, things like that. But it wasn't once or twice, and it wasn't to just clean my room. It was a pattern that was used. It started with me as a child in that way, in ways that seem so, kind of parenting, let me teach you responsibility, and turned into other worse things as I grew up, and became a teenager. So
So it was control. He was
yes,
it wasn't just healthy responsibility, it
right.
was a control pattern and it was around money.
Around money. It was
Yeah.
all around money, and that's where that was born. So that's an example of and that's why paying attention, I say is very important, and that's why this free tool, I created it because I feel like at this point I've mastered this identifying where my patterns come from, and for me, at first, it was hard to do that because there's a very fine line between what looks like a healthy pattern and what can be, something that is manipulation.
That's right, and patterns are so ingrained in us. Like, I broke a people-pleasing pattern in the last year and a half, and it was so ingrained in me, I didn't even realize I was a people pleaser. Hell, I'm coming up on 70 pretty soon. So, the deeply ingrained pattern that had worked for me for a long time, but it was no longer serving me, and it probably was never really serving me, but it was a way for me to stay safe. Um, okay, so I think the next thing so that's a thank you, Louisa. That's a very clear you picked up a money control pattern inside your family when you were young. You've carried that now, through a good portion of your life. And even though that you're aware of it,
Mhm.
it's interesting that these patterns, when we get in those situations, they still come up. And
Yes.
and I think one of the most important things, and I'm actually writing a book about this, y'all, and it's almost done. But once these patterns, we become aware of them, and Luis actually put this in our notes, and this is completely true. Awareness of your pattern is 80% of the problem. It's literally 80 because once you become aware of anything, you can't go back to it.
Yeah.
It's just, you know, it. just it's how your mind works. And so once you become aware of a pattern, you can't go back to it. But because it's so ingrained, it still takes a level of awareness not to fall back into it. And it takes time and just sitting with it because you've embodied that pattern. So literally embodied, put it in your body
Yeah.
over such a long period of time that it doesn't just get up and go out. Okay. And um, so we're talking about 80% is awareness, but then this last 20% is continued awareness with letting it sit and ruminating over it in the background as you move through life.
And I would add that that other 20% is action, and I do consider part of that letting it ruminate, um, being part of the action, because then what starts to happen is you need to let it ruminate, you need to understand it, sort of like how I was sitting there yesterday and took a split second to let it sink into my awareness that that's what was happening, um, and then, doing the I'm gonna say rewiring of it
I think that,
because
yeah.
yeah, because you are aware of it, which is great. That's 80% liberation. You can't, you can't unsee it after that. You just can't. But then it's, the actions. And like you said, Bill, I will emphasize that you will not fix it all the moment you become aware of it. That's the Even though it is the biggest part of it, it's 80%. You're 80%, on your way to being liberated from it. That 20% may take years of repeated rewiring for you to break that pattern.
I mean, I would say like my people pleasing, I realized it. I started, you know, working with it. And then there's the first time you have to tell somebody no.
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
like, oh my God, tell them no. This
yeah,
doesn't feel good.
yeah,
I'm used to saying yes, no matter what.
yeah,
Yeah, so that's a perfect example. Okay. I think we're going to get close to wrapping up here.
yeah.
Are we
Let's
about the
see.
time? So
We're
I
about
think
it.
the invitation this week is to observe without judgment,
Yes.
walking into your life and observing things and not judging things. So as soon as you see somebody and you go, oh, that's an ugly hat, or I would never buy that car, or I can't believe they said that, those are all judgments. And so the tool that Louisa has made for us deals with just inside this next week how to see that judgment, make a little note of it, observe it, watch it, and hopefully begin watching it float away just like a cloud.
Yeah, and just to sort of wrap that up, I agree. This is not about judgment. This is about recognizing, and it's important to remember these are not character flaws. You're
Right.
not going to sit here and diagnose yourself and tell yourself you're this kind of person or that kind of person. This is not about that. This is about bringing it into your awareness so that then you have a choice as to what to do with these patterns.
That's right.
And this free tool, that I've created is really great, but if you don't like paper, I have been lately, not always, mentioning to people, like, use voice notes. Grab the tool from us and voice it out, talk it out if it's better for you than writing it out. But it's the intention during these next 7 days is for you to observe and begin to identify what these patterns are. And I'll just say that, you know, I'm excited. I'm really excited to talk about this. I consider intelligence in a couple of different ways, and one of them is people who are able to recognize patterns, and the other, completely unrelated to this new series, but it's people who can understand that two things can be true at the same time. But for purposes of this intelligence definition that I want to share, I feel like this is a big part of living, a life that is conscious and a life in which you can practically embrace what you are here to experience and grow from it. We just want to invite you to stay open, be curious about yourself, and remember that as we go, judgment does not have a place in any of what's going to happen in this series from here on out.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I just
So,
want us to liberate ourselves to be free. That's what all the wisdom teachers, the prophets, everybody, it's about becoming free and
whatever that means.
being your authentic self and bringing your particular gifts into the world the way you need to bring them into the world, not the way the world has taught you to bring them in.
Yeah. And that's it. Thank you for watching today. Bill, do you want to say your email?
I will, and I'm sure that our editor, Yashva, will put this in, but my email is bill Bill, at sage, S-A-G-E, life, life.org. Bill at sagelife.org. It's pretty easy. Send us an email, send me an email, and I will send Luisa's tool out. We love y'all.
We love
Namaste.
y'all. Until next time.
If you're waking up, questioning everything, and trying to reconnect with who you truly are, I wrote this book for you. It's a guide to remembering your divine nature, healing old conditioning, and stepping into inner sovereignty. If that resonates, check out the link below, www.atobook.com.